Welcome to Unscripted with SST, the LinkedIn live show where we deep dive into the real, unfiltered world of IT, cybersecurity, and business technology. Brought to you by Secure Strategic Technology, we're here to cut through the noise, share expert insights, and tackle the challenges shaping the future of managed IT services. Live, raw, and unscripted. Joining me today is Bo Elston, the COO of Secure Strategic Technology. With a wealth of experience in IT strategy, operations, and cybersecurity, Bo plays a key role in driving innovation and delivering top-tier managed IT solutions. Today in Unscripted, we're tackling a critical topic in IT support, reactive versus proactive, and Bo is going to help us break down the real impact of each approach. Good afternoon, Mr. Elston.
Hello. How are we doing today?
We're doing well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So the subject of reactive versus proactive, I know we're both pretty passionate about this, being in the managed services space. To kind of kick the conversation off, can you give us like a little bit of a breakdown on maybe each approach, reactive and then proactive?
Yeah, I guess just kind of start out kind of defining what we consider each of those. Easiest one, just looking at reactive work, that's everything that's broken. All of the work that we do that falls into that reactive bucket is just the work performed to restore those systems back to their operational state, period. Now, the proactive work, that's kind of a much broader umbrella for the types of work. I mean, that a lot of times the proactive work people kind of consider just updating systems. Are they patched? Are they running the latest version? That kind of stuff. That's certainly part of proactive work, and that's certainly something we do highly recommend. But there's more than that as well. And so some of the other proactive things that to kind of note would be like assessments, maintenance, going in and checking the configuration on things. Is this still configured the way that it needs to be to run optimally? So just, that kind of work, again, proactive. And then some of the other stuff is just kind of the bigger planning, the making sure you're taking data that's found in the systems. Hey, we found this out of date or whatever, and you have a plan to address it, right? So some of that stuff you just fix. You found something, it just needs to be tweaked. But then sometimes you need to have kind of a bigger strategy for how you address that work, right? Sometimes that's going to take some dollars. Sometimes it's just time. Whatever it is, just making sure you're doing some planning as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so if we use the car analogy, what does that look like?
Well, you like this. I'll let you speak to that.
Okay. So I guess, if we apply the car analogy to reactive and proactive, I don't do any maintenance on my car. I just drive it every day and I use and abuse it. One day it locks up on the side of the road. I take it in somehow to the mechanic. The mechanic says, the pistons are all seized, the engine's shot, you got to replace the whole thing. It's a pretty expensive endeavor. That's a reactive approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
A proactive approach would be, I'm going to bring my car in. I'm going to be able to drive it in nicely to the shop. They're going to do the 12-point inspection. They're going to change all the fluids and change the oil filter. And we do all these things so that we don't have these unplanned, really expensive events around the car, right? That's the proactive approach. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what we're talking about here today, right?
Sure. And taking that to the next step would be also having a plan, like the cars don't last forever, right? I can't run this for 25 years. So having a life cycle plan, right? That's proactive work as well. Knowing, 7 years I'm going to use this vehicle, or 10 years, 15 years, whatever you have. But I'm also planning to replace this. I'm going to need a car. So when that car fails, ultimately everything fails. IT is no different than vehicles, right? So I now have a plan. It's time to replace that vehicle. It's just this upkeep and regular maintenance isn't sufficing anymore. Now it needs to be replaced.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So can you talk a little bit for our audience about the risks that a business is exposed to when they are purely kind of in this reactive mode?
Yeah, I mean, the risks itself are like it's really the big risk is just the damage to the business, right? The operational impacts that just dealing with this things that are broken and you never know when they're going to break and the type of impact that they're going to be. It's a pretty significant risk that these customers, people that we deal with that aren't doing that proactive work. It's kind of you're just rolling the dice, and when are you going to have that big impact? Doesn't mean you're never going to have it, right? It's like you can do all the proactive maintenance in the world. Sometimes things just happen. It's not just like if you do this, you're never going to have that. But generally, what we see is when you have those issues and you're doing some type of maintenance and doing that upkeep on those systems and having plans for them, generally the impact is going to be significantly less because you're prepared, right? It's not like, oh boy, we've never looked at this thing in 5 years and it failed and we're way out of date and it, manufacturer can't even support it. Like you're not dealing with those big catastrophic kind of things. So like, yes, you could still deal with issues, but generally you're going to minimize those with the upkeep, right? It's just the big impact stuff generally is significantly less with doing that proactive maintenance and just paying attention to those systems.
Mm-hmm. So when we have unplanned issues in our IT environment and we need to react to them, that's generally way more expensive to the business than if we have a proactive event and we have a plan with it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so as we start to gain momentum around this proactive approach, it's the goal to proactive work is going to eventually wind our reactive work down to zero. We're never going to get to zero, but hopefully we continue to approach it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's that, like you said, exactly the goal of the proactive upkeep. It's to minimize that reactive disruption as a result.
Mm-hmm. For our audience, can you kind of go through maybe some elements of a proactive approach to IT? Maybe touching on AI, maybe some processes, maybe some tools. There's just different things in your mind that are necessary for a proactive approach to IT.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be super complex. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different strategies to it. And as you grow and do more of it, certainly you're going to want to leverage more of this. But just starting out even simple of, just having a process to identify like what are those criticality, the critical systems you should be looking at. What are these things that need this proactive maintenance that are part of these critical business operations that we need to adhere to. So just starting out with that. It's not even so much like can you automate and do all this kind of stuff. There's plenty of tools these days, and like with AI and all the automation stuff, you can start to integrate these. But first, like you got to know what a healthy environment looks like. So just I mean, even starting with that, as far as most systems are going to have a dashboard. They have some sort of like health type of dashboard that you can go in there, and you're going to have the red, green, and yellow, and in some type of I could look at that and kind of see where things are configured. You're also, I mean, looking at just, how did I plan to set this up, right? What were some of the parameters that were put in place? Certainly automation or AI can kind of help address like configuration type of issues. Like, are these settings still like, hey, this is what we planned, here's what it is now. And sometimes you can, those systems will help kind of just say, yeah, this is out of alignment. But really, where we look at it, it's starting with figuring out what a healthy system looks like, and if you don't have that, it's going to be really hard to be proactive. It's like, I don't know if it should be, this thing is given an error, but everything's fine. Should that still be an error? Well, I would want to know, like, why is that giving an error? And is it really broken or not? Users aren't reporting anything, but what is the impact related to it? So just those kind of things, I'd say start with that kind of stuff. It's like just figuring out like those healthy environments. What does health look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So establishing a really good baseline of all your systems and your platforms is a good starting point so that when things are drifting from that, good,
Yep.
bad, or otherwise.
Yep.
Sure.
I mean, we started this process, long time ago, before we were an MSP, we were doing a lot of projects for customers and kind of just more of a break fix type of model. But we looked in and we were seeing like big issues come from customers where things were broken. And it was like, God, how do we get ahead of this? Right. Because we would do a project for a customer and it would be a while before we revisited. And all of a sudden we get a call like, yeah, you guys did this last project for us and now that system's broken. And it was, well, so much it would have changed between the time of implementation and the time that something broke. And if we were looking at that on a regular basis, we would see when things were starting to go off the rails and we wouldn't have these like massive outages. And what we saw is when we started to do that work, we just picked like, a server environment or a backup environment or a network environment and just said like, hey, these are the things that we want in place. And then we would go check for those. And if they weren't, we could follow up and address that kind of stuff before massive issues. And we did see that. That was kind of like when the light bulb started to go on that, hey, this proactive work actually has some meaningful results. It's not just like, go put the system in there and when it dies, call us again, because that was not a good experience for the customers. It was not a good experience for us trying to recover those systems. And so what can we do to be proactive? It was just, we created a checklist. I mean, it really boiled down to a lot of like, these are the 15 things we want to check. And we would produce a little report for customers like, yeah, this is kind of what we found and this is what we need to do. And it generally led to a lot better outcome for our customers because it was the big issues started to dissipate because we were doing things before they were completely broken.
Yeah, no, that's great. So obviously we have this perspective as a managed service provider, but this reactive versus proactive is really applicable to any organization, right? Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things that we've done over the years to get better and better and more efficient with the proactive work is coming up with really defined roles and responsibilities and in processes and procedures to be able to do those roles and responsibilities. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like maybe just, generically, what that might look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, where it starts out, like for us, we have some different areas as an MSP, and one of them is we have somebody responsible for just the upkeep of all of the tools that we use for service delivery. Like that area, that's what they do, and that area doesn't necessarily need to know the nuances of our customers, so they can just kind of support those across the base, or entire install base, I should say. We also have a role that's a little bit more customer centric, that they know the nuances about the customer and are making sure those tools are tweaked just exactly for the customer needs. And they know how things should be set up because as much as a lot of these tools are one size fits all, or you try to have, that consistent setup across, they don't always work that way, right? Each business operates their own way and you need to make sure that those are tweaked. And so that individual, we call them a technical point of contact, they're the ones responsible for it. And then we also have another role, kind of like more a higher level. It's the CIO or BCIO in our role, where they're the ones that are responsible for kind of the business being proactive and having those strategies and plans in place and taking what we found, kind of from the tools and operational side of what we're delivering is from a service perspective and making sure that meets the business needs. So having those strategic plans and, just at a simple base, a lot of life cycle refresh, but then also understanding, business goals. What are we trying to do? And making sure, again, there's plans within IT to be able to support those business goals. So those are some things. And when we look at this too, talking with customers about like internally being proactive, a lot of this stuff just starts with ownership. Like we figured out these ownership areas across like our tool sets and how we're aligned with our service delivery model for our customers. But even internally, we talk a lot with customers and making sure, one thing that we see is like the application owners. There's oftentimes like core business apps or business processes that customers really, focusing around that and having some ownership and understanding like, okay, now this business process, it's a lot of times those are associated with a specific tool for delivery and having some internal ownership with them as well. And so they're now responsible for some of the upkeep and really mastering those processes and tools as well is something, we work really hard with our customers to make sure that that's in place as well.
Good. So you got this team of proactive engineers that are really trying to ensure that the technology that is in the business is really aligned with the strategic objectives of the business.
Yeah.
Good. So one other kind of thing I want to touch on here with, for our audience today is, as kind of the threat landscape is ever increasing, and we have more, like every facet of every business has IT that is tightly integrated with it. Um, Having a significant component around our proactive work aligned with security is important for us, and we believe it's important for every organization, right? And can you talk a little bit about what we're doing, and not there's others as well, in the different kind of, I guess, cybersecurity frameworks that would be out there, to help align your proactive work to?
Yeah, I guess that's one of the important things that has transitioned over the last few years is really focusing around. I mean, there's a lot of different type of operational frameworks. One that we chose and we found has really been a good fit for us in to help our customers out with their security postures using the CIS framework. What we found is that's kind of a really simple, straightforward. It's easy for them to comprehend when we're talking why we're doing this stuff. It's really like compared to some of the other ones, just a little bit more like it's right to the point, pretty easy to pick up. So what we've done is just made sure we're aligning our services, our tools, and how those different areas of operation can help support the practices that are set forth in that CIS operational framework. Again, to really make sure that we're addressing and doing the right things. It's really a lot of that proactive work that needs to get done to make sure that the cybersecurity risk for our customers is minimized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you think that CIS, the adoption of the CIS framework, has made cybersecurity more tangible for us and for our customers?
Yeah, I think it's just been it's helped with the conversation. Not like customers haven't really cared about security. I think you ask any business leader or anybody in there, it's like, yeah, cybersecurity is a big deal. We need to be worried about it. But conversations a few years ago were like, well, do we have endpoint security on there, right? Do we have our antivirus up to date? And it's like nowadays that threat landscape has changed significantly. It's not just like, is your endpoint protected? You have cloud systems, all these barriers. I mean, there's just so much to it. So it's that layered security approach. It's like what your employees are doing are such a big part of security. So it really encompasses all of these different things that we need to be doing and have in place for a business to make sure that the right security is in place and we're minimizing that, which is a significant risk these days. It's really helped us when having those conversations with customers on like these are the right things to do. It makes sense to them, and it's something that's tangible. We can easily deliver, and also, with this assessment process, it's something you can measure. Like you can tell, like checkbox, we got this done, right? So we can score this stuff, and we can show progress as we're moving along and starting to mature these customers with their cybersecurity journey.
Mm-hmm. Great. So can I ask you, I guess, in your professional opinion, is there a reason why businesses are maybe hesitant to embrace this proactive approach?
I don't know necessarily whether they're hesitant to it or they've just never really engaged with IT. I think what we found is the more customers that are engaged with IT understand and that becomes just part of what you do, the proactive nature. The ones that we see that are more reactionary are just ones that probably see IT. It's becoming less and less over the time, but those are the ones that are just like, yeah, we've always done it this way. And like we run our business and we have IT in the business and not like IT is part of the business. So I think kind of framing up like how IT is and what IT does to enable the business really changes that proactive versus reactive perspective. Once you like it's aligned with the business goals. Hey, we want to double in size. Excuse me. We want to, we want to grow. I mean, you talk to any business, they're going to want to grow, right? It's more dollars, it's more location, whatever it is, right? And IT is going to be an integral part of whatever that process is. So if IT isn't running well, that's going to be a big barrier to reaching those ultimate goals, right? IT is really an enabler these days, always has been, but now and more with the the adoption of technology and like just some of the new technologies and cloud and the work everywhere. It's really, really part of every single business now. And so, taking advantage of that technology and having it part of the business, when customers do that, then it's like, yeah, the proactive that's what you got to be doing, because you have to have a plan for the next part of technology. It's kind of not just a set and forget. And, we install this technology and we'll check in 5 years and we just let it kind of rot there. Like, you're seeing less and less of that.
So do you think that it's a significant mind shift from a leadership standpoint? Like they are critical, like leadership, this has to be a top-down kind of approach, right?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think most leaders these days understand the importance of technology within the environment. I mean, hey, you and I have been around the game for quite a while. When we first started doing this IT stuff, it was just like some people are doing it. Well, there's not a business these days that don't have some type of technology as part of it. It's just now how much is being used is significantly different. And it's also like people are the enabler of it, and it's part of every business now. So these conversations about the proactive reactive, it's more just making sure they're spending enough time taking to this and thinking of technology as being part of the business and not just something that's in the business.
And so one thing that comes to mind for me is, from a leadership standpoint, when we're talking about proactive, we're talking about the initial investment being probably greater. Hopefully the total cost of ownership over time is going down, right? But that's a big educational thing that we kind of run into, right? Whether it's going to be more tools, more human resources, whatever it might be, to actually most environments are underserving their IT. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Especially ones without a real concise plan, that they haven't really thought strategically about their technology. Oftentimes we're going to see, some technical debt associated with it, that, hey, these systems have been neglected for a little while. The software, we're not running that right software package. Some of the workflow needs to be adjusted to maximize, the features that are available in it, configuring some of the integrations that would just, dramatically shift like what work is being done where. So like all of those things, they come at a cost. So it's, really important to have that strategy, that plan. We've come into some customers over the years that just have a significant amount of technical debt. And it's not just like, we're going to go refresh everything and problem solve. Like, there's that disrupts business, and not everybody has unlimited budgets to go invest in this stuff. So it's, again, having that plan, knowing where those dollars should be invested and everything, making sure it all fits together with where the business is going. That's such a huge part of it. It's not just like, yeah, we'll go sell you this giant project and call us in 20 years. That's where we lived in that world in past days, where it was just projects, right? And without that upkeep and the proactive work, it's just a never-ending problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's more expensive, like we talked about at the onset of this conversation, right? Like reactive is definitely more expensive than proactive. Proactive might take, a little bit of a initial, outlay of cash. But ultimately, we're a firm believer in the total cost of ownership around IT is going down if we take this proactive approach.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. Your actual spend in a reactive world, like you're rolling the dice, could be significantly less, likely is significantly more. It just, when you're factoring in like that total cost of ownership and the impact on the business, what you're saving there might not save you actually any money in the long run.
Yeah, and we could just be talking about disruption of access to applications and services for people to do their job function, and then they can't do it. So now you're just paying people to, do nothing. Or the extreme version of this is there's some kind of cyber event that takes place. It's like debilitating to your business, right, for an extended period of time, or even potentially taking it out. Like, like that's a reality that all small businesses are aren't necessarily aware of, but they're definitely exposed to these days.
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of get to the end of our conversation here, do you have any questions for me on this subject?
I did, but I don't have any right now.
That's all right. And we covered a lot here for sure. So maybe you can help me summarize what we talked about. So reactive versus proactive. We go back to this car analogy, or you could use, I mean, there's a multitude of analogies I suppose you could use, right? But we want to invest in our technology ahead of time, proactively, with disciplined processes and procedures, so that we don't have these unplanned, very expensive outages to our business.
Nailed it.
Okay. And if we, in summary, say 2 starting points for maybe an enterprise or a business that isn't engaged with an MSP that takes this proactive approach, what are give our audience 2 things that they can maybe focus on to get going in this what might seem like a grandiose task?
Mm-hmm. I would say kind of one approach is just starting small, start from the bottom up, trying to pay attention, even starting, it's going to be the easiest to start like reactionary thinking, right? What's broken all the time? Those are likely the systems. A little bit about keeping some proactive work on those is going to minimize the reactive work. So, just an example, like regular workstations, are they getting patched? There's things like that, do we have systems in place that are taking care of that stuff? Just those little things like that can make a big difference in spending time, reviewing, and is everything up to date, rather than just like when it breaks, I do that work, right? So some of those things I would say, generally ton of different tools out there. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat per se, to take care of that kind of stuff. Doesn't have to be complex. Just find a system that's problematic and start to, assess it, figure out like what a healthy environment looks like, and start to have a plan. Like, here's the things that we need to introduce to keep that system healthy. From a different perspective is just making sure, from a leadership perspective, is having that engagement, right? And understanding what IT means to the business, making sure, the impact is assessed, and there's plans to address it, right? So like whatever the business goals are, have some plans of how IT can support that, right? Just those open dialogues too are such a key thing, where, it's kind of all the time you hear this, like, it's like, oh, we just never thought of IT that way. And just understanding how IT supports the business, right? The leadership engagement is going to go a long way from a proactive perspective.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for that. And I guess with that being said, that wraps up today's episode of Unscripted with SST. A huge thank you to you both for coming in and sharing your insights, and the power of proactive IT support, and really why businesses can't afford to be in this reactive mode any longer.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you are out there listening and you're ready to embark on this proactive journey, don't hesitate to reach out. We would gladly share some more insight here. You can hit us up on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, or on the web. Until next time, stay secure, stay strategic, and stay ahead.